father was an observant Jew, as best he could be, and felt that his two daughters, well, more particularly, he felt that his youngest son, me, should have a Jewish education, more than he could provide in Roblin, where there was but one other Jewish family. And so we moved to Edmonton. I was in about grade 5, and I couldn't go to Talmud Torah at that time because I hadn't started with my contemporaries. But in those days, they had night classes, and I wasn't even equipped for the night classes. The night class teacher was a man by the name of Charles Colliger, Mr. Colliger, a delightful fellow whom I, in later years, learned to respect and reflectively enjoy. But I can't say I embraced him with enthusiasm as a youngster, because I was obliged by my father to attend the classes which would private lessons which would enable me or equip me to go to the night classes at Talmud Torah. None of us in the night classes really were very attentive to our studies. We were young and wanted to play, but that's why we came to Edmonton. My father sold a successful business to make the move and became a wholesale dry goods man in Edmonton. He purchased a business called Bond Dry Goods Limited, from a Jewish man in Edmonton by the name of Mr. Jake Samuels, and then his entrepreneurial skills kicked in, and in addition to being a dry goods wholesaler here, he became interested in real estate and property. Having said that, he was a very active member of Beth Israel Synagogue and the Masonic Lodge. Mm-hmm. I followed in his footsteps into the Beth Israel family of synagogues, but never joined the Masons. That's interesting. My bar mitzvah was held at the old synagogue on 95th Street, and I remember it well, and I remember the party we had at our homes. The celebration, bar mitzvah celebrations, were a little more modest in those days than they grew to be, but it was a lovely event. I know it pleased my parents to equip me to become a bar mitzvah, in addition to visiting with Charlie Colliger, who went into business, incidentally, and opened a frozen meat business very successfully. But it also gave birth to his nickname amongst some of us. We called him Frozen Charlie.
And
not to his face, of course.
Yeah.
But my father, we had a wonderful rabbi in those days in Edmonton, Rabbi Postone. And my father was less than pleased with the lack of religiosity that the more secular study at the Talmud Torah presented, so he sent me to have lessons with Rabbi Postone twice a week. And at the time, I was a little resentful of having to take away playtime for study time. But as the years followed, I came to appreciate enormously the wisdom and the affection, not only that I had for Rabbi Postone, but many of my peers had for Rabbi Postone. I don't know if you're aware, Rabbi Postone was, in football terms, a triple threat. Not only was he a rabbi and could Kriya, he could daven beautifully, but he was a shoichet and, more particularly, a moil. So almost without exception, my contemporaries had been subject to his ministrations at Brit Milah. I missed out on that. I had, from Rabbi Postone, that is, but we were all very fond of him, and he was wise, gentle, and a wonderful rabbi, and I still consider him, in retrospectively, as my rabbi. Torah at that time was our night classes. I think it was 103rd Street, just off
Right.
Jasper Avenue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was also the home of, and that was the beginning of my involvement with the Jewish community. It housed the various youth Jewish organizations, such as Young Judea, and eventually, I don't think AZA spent much of its meeting time there, but certainly Young Judea did, and it was a building much used, and it had a huge second floor, and one of my early memories is the celebration and large meeting that was held there in 1948 when Israel was declared a state. I remember that meeting. But then the school moved to its new location, and that's where my children attended Talmud Torah. It's interesting because we were members of at about the same time, the new Beth Israel was built on 119th Street, and again, Rabbi Postone held classes there. I don't know if we had a junior congregation. The junior congregation was held on 103rd Street at the old Talmud Torah building, and Rabbi Postone prepared many of us to daven, and his word was, "This week you'll be the Shliach Tzibur, the leader of the congregation," and we had to do Shachris, and then we went on to learn Musaf. Subsequently, when we moved to the new synagogue, as a youngster, we had Sunday morning Talis and Film clubs, and I can still hear and see the deliberate cadence of Rabbi Postone leading us in the prayers so that we would learn them and be able to memorize them or say them with cadence and deliberation. All my friends were there. David Grossman, now gone. Aaron Stabsky, now gone. My venerated friend Ron Burkov. Ed Pecos, who's still alive and ministering to the needy in Toronto. We had a whole cadre. Jack Cohen. We had a whole cadre. The other building that I should mention is Beth Shalom, the building on 119th Street. And when it was first built, the community contributed to it. Even members of Beth Israel, my father contributed. My wife's father, Abraham Estrin, was a contributor. Many people contributed because they held out to us that it would be it would be a location where we could meet and play, which we did. AZA used to have its meetings there, and they had a gymnasium on the second floor. And as a grade 8, grade 9, grade 10er, we played basketball, and it was a wonderful time in Edmonton because there was less abrasiveness between synagogue affiliation and more unity amongst young people as being just members of the community that could hang out together and play. And I suppose I wasn't part of the federation when the location was purchased overlooking the river valley, but I was asked to be. I was the first president of the Edmonton Jewish Federation when they merged from the Community Council as the spending element and the United Jewish Appeal as the collecting element. And that merger, once again, required some stick handling skill in terms of bringing the two facets under one roof, the spenders and the gatherers, so to speak. And over those years, I used to take a different role because originally I was an advocate for the Talmud Torah to receive funding from the United Jewish Appeal, and afterwards this new federation setup had to adjudicate on applicants seeking funds. Other buildings, Well, we could spend a little time on the 95th Street building, which apparently has had a number of renovations. It became a Catholic church, and as I understand it, there's rumblings that it might be available to become some sort of archival location, and I'm hoping that it will. Yes, one of the great moves in Edmonton was the building and the creation of the new Talmud Torah, which I believe was built about 1999, or about the same time that we were building the new shul in the West End. And there's a bit of an unsung hero involved in Edmonton, perhaps a controversial figure, but one who has done some essentially good things. His name is Barry Slosky, and he almost single-handedly took on the fundraising role to establish a new Talmud Torah school. And he, with his then wife, Cheryl, were very, very instrumental in organizing a cadre of people that moved heaven and earth to get enough private funding to put this school together. And kudos to them, because the school itself is beautiful and it's a wonderful location. On a personal note, of course, like other, and you're speaking to me, my family contributed to this school building project, as did the family of my wife, and hundreds of others in greater or less degrees. And what's interesting to me is the fact that the land and that building belonged to the society. It was purchased through negotiations by Barry Slosky and from the school board, and does not belong to them. That seems to be a thread that we have in Edmonton. Hardcore capital places that we built and that have been created by public contributions remain and aren't leased out or subject to being taken away. So hopefully, as time changes and our community demographically shrinks with the inevitable ebb and flow of population trends in Canadian communities, Edmonton seems to be on a bit of a wane right now, but there are great opportunities for young people to move to this great city. We do have a Jewish community that can be made as vibrant as the members of the community want it to be, and the city itself has opportunities that make life here quite pleasant, and I might say affordable. When I hear about the cost of tuitions in major cities like Toronto and Montreal, and reflect on tuition costs at our Talmud Torah, which are significant for an age group of parents that have children here. Our parents in Edmonton are blessed with the situation of being a member of the Independent School Association, of being a member of the Edmonton Public School Board, and having defrayed ever so much of the costs involved in that context. I just have one general observation again in that context. Edmonton has nurtured me in terms of being a young man involved in Jewish organizations, where I learned and had the opportunity to chair meetings and to see how organizations run. And it served me personally in good stead. As a high school student, a few of the Jewish community attended Victoria Composite High School as a brand new school, as opposed to West Glen High School, where most of our Jewish youngsters took their secondary education. And notwithstanding the small number of Jewish students at Victoria Composite High School, which was a veritable melting pot at that in the 50s as a brand new school. I became school president of that school, and once again learned to swim in waters that carried diverse interests, and learned a cooperative way of coalescing diversity into a cohesiveness that moved forward. That too served me in good stead at the University of Alberta, where I studied political science, and extracurricularly was a member of the debating society, the political science club. I think I was president of both of those, and other organizations. I remember in 1956 or 57 hearing John Diefenbaker speak for the first time on the Suez Crisis. His voice still resonates in my ears, and while I didn't become a member of his party, I did answer the speech from the throne in our mock parliament where I was involved, and we changed the name from mock to model parliament. That political involvement moved forward when I graduated law, and both my wife, who is the real politician in our family, and I became heavily involved in a variety of public political processes, provincial and federal. Also, we've been recognized so much by the community, and we're so grateful to the community. One of the highlight memories we have is our involvement at the Negev dinner, and it was a grand affair. Important to note as well in terms of Beth Israel, not only was I bar mitzvahed in Beth Israel, but Esther and I were married in the Beth Israel on 119th Street. Each of our children were married in Beth Israel. The two girls married on 119th Street, and my son Daniel and Marina were the first couple, first marriage to take place at the new Beth Israel Synagogue on Wolf Willow. I think that that's a history for my family worth remembering, and certainly makes the facilities and since I was bar mitzvahed at the old 95th Street Synagogue, gives me a really unique connection to those buildings.